that's always nice. While Jim's standing, we can join him and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we can also do the mission of the Toastmasters Club, please. The mission of the Toastmasters Club is to provide a mutually supportive and positive learning environment in which every individual member has the opportunity to develop oral communication and leadership skills, which in turn foster self-confidence and personal growth. Thank you. Now you can be seated. I know Pete has a couple of business items, so I'll let you start with business. Pete?
Okay,
please.
I'll just stand here if you please. Nancy sends her regrets. Her department was short people today, so she won't be with us giving a speech. Two things going on in our world. 2015, time to reset your goals and your preference for your week to give a speech. If you haven't done one of these or turned it in, I think maybe George and Alan need those, or did you turn one in and I misplaced it?
I have not.
Okay, good. I think other than that, we're pretty well set. So, and the other one is next, or 2 weeks from today, concludes our contest for inviting potential members. Just a reminder. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pete. Jim, you're so nice and quiet back there. Do you have any business?
Just an information item. There's a program in Toastmasters called the Fab Five, and it's clubs that reach the 5 goals early. And many of them actually have reached it by the 1st of January, and that list has been published. They asked me to serve on that particular committee, and I have found that with this election to the City Study Commission, I just don't have time. So they opted to give me another job, which I also declined. And they needed someone to contact 40 clubs in District 78 by telephone with a script to encourage them and bring them up to date. So if anybody has in mind that they would like to have jobs and move up in Toastmasters, there are ample opportunities. Another item unrelated to that is there are some folks in the Sydney area who are trying to get a club together. And I've been solicited to help with that effort. I haven't accepted that yet, and I'll have more information available, and I'll put it into the minutes today.
And those interested people in Sydney?
For a Sydney club.
For a Sydney club, and that I would think that they were welcome to join us if they want to kind of get the feel of it, or but their ultimate goal is to start their own.
Have their own club in Sydney, which they did about 25 years ago, and then it did not continue. They got it started and died.
Yep. Well, I wish them luck and hope they get it going and keep it going. Alan, Virginia, do you have any business? No. All right. Well, then I will turn it over to Virginia Say, who will be our Toastmaster today. And Virginia is someone that I always feel at peace with, and that's because you are so at peace, and I just think that is wonderful and just a wonderful gift to share with us. So I'm very excited to have you as a Toastmaster today. Please help me welcome Virginia.
Okay, so we have speeches. One's by Pete Bruno. It's going to give a short specialty speech. It's going to be 3 to 5 minutes long. He's speaking in praise. So we can welcome Pete. And Alan is our general evaluator today, and so he will give us information later on too, as far as that goes. And so, Pete, I guess you'll be our first speaker today.
Thank you, Virginia. Fellow Toastmasters, before I begin my speech, since I'm wearing 2 hats today, let me also do my duties as WAG because it fits the speech as well. The word of the day, altruism or altruistic. chosen before I wrote the speech and before this item was in the news. First, let me give you the definition. Altruism is the unselfish regard for or devotion to the welfare of others. Behavior by an animal that is not beneficial to or may be harmful to itself, but that benefits others of its species, showing a disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others. Let me read to you from a parent's email and then reach a conclusion in regard to altruism. 17-year-old Cassidy Sandstrom, a senior at Larimore High School, rushed to the front of the bus when the 62-year-old bus driver slumped over in his chair. With the bus stopped on the railroad tracks east of Larimore, Cassidy was seated in the back of the bus when she, quote, realized what was happening and rushed to the front of the bus, ushering the other students toward the emergency door at the back of the bus. Her altruism saved all of the students' lives but her own and the driver's. Altruism, just this week in North Dakota. Altruism or altruistic is an adjective. And now for the speech entitled In Praise of Jim Squires.
Oh my goodness.
This speech calls for us to consider the meaning of life, and particularly Jim's life, and what that means to us. To talk about qualities that make him worthy of praise, a source of inspiration, the debt we owe the individual, the lesson and inspiration we receive, and perhaps even his place in history. That's the assignment. Here's the speech. Some might consider Jim to be opinionated, as he does have opinions, and he has the ability to share them to Bozeman and back. Trouble is, in the vast majority of cases, they're good opinions, like the ones that caused him to engage himself and us in forming a healthy and strong community. Jim began a life of service, quote, because it's the right thing to do. That value took him to Brazil to serve in the United States President's Peace Corps. The saying is that behind every good man, there's a great woman. For Jim, that truth started in Brazil, where he met and later married the love of his life, who inspires us also with statements such as, in the land of frogs, squat. But I digress. Jim came back to Montana and has served us ever since. Most recently as pastor, secretary of the Ministerial Association, secretary and area governor of Toastmasters, leadership Glendive teacher, Dawson Community College instructor and board member, etc., etc., etc. What's his inspiration? If I had to pick just one source, I bet it would have to be Christ Jesus. What debt do we owe Jim? The attitude of gratitude. Whether you or I agree with Jim on every issue or not, he's like Roosevelt's man in the arena. It's not the critic who counts, nor the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who is at best known in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. President Theodore Roosevelt. And second, we owe Jim to remember and apply that the sincerest form of flattery is imitation. That's what we owe Jim. Making Glendive strange or unusual in the sense of the service that we provide to our fellow human beings, that we might imitate his altruism in service. In conclusion, guys like Jim don't really like to be the subject of a speech like this. They like to serve without public recognition. So let us conclude that the best thing we can do to respond to Jim is to also serve as Toastmaster officers, as concerned community members, but also have the wisdom of Jim, as he just recently pointed out, of turning down a few things from time to time so we don't get spread so thin we're not effective in anything. But Jim, thank you. Thank you for your example of service. Yeah.
The next speaker is Peggy. She's giving the last required speech in the Bronze Communicator series. This speech from the Better Speaker series is on concluding your speech. It's 10 to 15 minutes. Please welcome Peggy.
Fellow Toastmasters, maybe you remember not too long ago I did a speech on beginning your speech, and I said that was the most important part of your speech. And now here today I'm here to tell you concluding your speech. That's what people remember. The reason I wanted to do this is many times I have given a speech and that red light comes on, I'm not done, and I just kind of mumble my way to the end and say thank you and get off the stage. And it's not memorable because you want to finish, you want a dessert, you want a conclusion. And so I'm here to tell you today that in the book of like I don't remember the title of it, but it's like 217 of some of the very best speeches. Only 7 of them end with thank you. But I'm going to give you 6 tips today on ways that you can end your speech and some other tips for closing. First off, you can give people an idea that the closing is coming by saying, in conclusion, or let me say by ending, or in summary, so then they know what's going to be coming. Your ending should make an impact. It should be like fireworks, you know, it's that thing people are going to take with them in the end. And how long should the end of your speech be? They say it should be 5 to 10% of your total speech. So that's much longer than just thank you. You can kind of summarize things and go from there. So some techniques that you can use. We'll see if this. One is end with a quotation. Just like we can start with a quotation and that gets us on the right track, ending with a quotation is similar. For instance, if you're talking about the future environment, you could use George Bernard Shaw's words, some men see things as they are and ask why. I dare to dream of things that never were and ask why not. Here's another one, and this is actually repeating something that was in that quotation. more than 450 years before the birth of Christ, Confucius said, "What I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember. But what I do, I understand. So let's do it together." We've heard what we have to do. We've seen what we need to do. Now's the time to do it. And together we can do it. So you're emphasizing that do. Of course, Lincoln had many good quotes. But during the Civil War, on the brink of that, Lincoln looked changed directly in the eye and said, "The dogma of the quiet past are inadequate for the stormy present and the future. As our circumstances are anew, we must think anew and act anew." So then you can take that the next step farther using that quote and go on to say, and so today, we, ladies and gentlemen here, we need to look at this old issue in a new way. Not simply for today, but to make our tomorrows more rewarding, more fulfilling, more compelling because of the changes that we make today. So with your help, we can think anew, we can act anew on these new issues. Sounds like a speech that Jim will do about the new commission here. Okay, so that's using a quote.
Use that first one.
Okay. Another method is a short story or anecdote to end. And here again, I'm reminded of the speech that Jim was giving about a missionary. And he ended with whatever happened to that missionary these many years later. But it could be a little story about you were telling a story about a little 4-year-old that was holding bubbles in his hands so gently. Well, now those same gentle hands are now poised skillfully around the hearts of hundreds of people. Today, he is a heart surgeon. So you conclude that. Or there is a story about a coach. They actually lost the game, although some players played extremely well. So the team is down in the locker room after the game, and he asks kind of the lead player, say it was Carl Malone, come stand up here and stand with your back to the players here. So he does. Then he asks somebody from the bench, didn't play at all, come up here, stand with your back to the game. Okay, now turn around. And he says, "We're playing for this team, not for the person that's on the back." So it was a conclusion about teamwork. So a little short story. The third one is a call to action. In fact, this is where many of our speeches, or why we give speeches, we're trying to convince somebody of something. So you need to end with something that will make them move forward. For instance, in order that we guarantee that we save our Toastmasters Club, we need to bring in more members today. So if every person in this room leaves and immediately contacts at least 3 people before the next meeting and has them join, I guarantee by next year we'll have 24 new members. So action. Patrick Henry was a great one that in his stirring speech at March 23rd, 1775, he said, "Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others will take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." So that was his call to action. And probably the most famous one we all can quote is JFK saying, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." And here's one more, and a lot of times you'll notice like that repeat of do it's getting a cadence and you can repeat phrases. Here's one. Architects cannot renovate it. Businesses cannot incorporate it. Engineers cannot calculate it. Governments cannot regulate it. Judges cannot adjudicate it. Lawyers cannot litigate it. Manufacturers cannot fabricate it. Politicians cannot appropriate it. Scientists cannot formulate it. Technicians cannot generate it. Only you can orchestrate it. So it kind of has a rhythm. So. And number 4 is ask a rhetorical question. Question is, am I spelling rhetorical right? Okay, and an example of this is, what choice will you make when you leave here today? And actually that works for that Toastmasters one. Will you go and contact your legislators, or will you just go about your normal business? Or something like, we can have this choice or we can have that choice. The choice is ours and it's based entirely on the decisions each of us make today. So you can do this or this, but I know I'm doing this, you know, so get them to move to action. And number 5 is refer back to the beginning. And this also could be referring back to the title of your speech. So let's say somebody was talking about winning. Let's say, together we can win. And so you repeated that, together we can win, several times during your speech. I know that all of you are talented, all of you are driven. I know that none of us can do this alone, but together we can win. All right, so you get the audience involved. If you're going to refer back to the title, sometimes you have to write your last sentence first and then figure out your title, and that will get that back to using it again. And I'm forgetting my example there, so we'll just go on. And the last example is summarizing your main points. It's like the 3 parts of a speech. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them, so that it is refreshed in their minds what we're talking about. So as we close, I want to refresh you on the different parts of this speech. And also it can be repetitive. And this again is that kind of cadence of the drummer. And so what we've been saying is that life is an adventure, dare it. A duty, perform it. An opportunity, take it. A journey, complete it. A promise, fulfill it. A puzzle, solve it. A goal, achieve it. And as you summarize your points, it depends on who you're talking to, how you might end that very end. If it's if you want some questions, before I take questions, let me conclude this point by saying, if it's for a religious group, you might say, may God bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you, and go on from there. If it's to a graduating class that you're speaking to, or a congratulatory one, I salute all of you and everyone in your organization, and I look forward to your continued success. Or you can kind of switch a proverb all around and make it fit whatever you're talking about. For instance, may the transformational force be with you. Or if it's a demonstration, you can close the book and say, well, this concludes this chapter of my life, or you can don your hat and say, it's time for me to head out and find the road to success. So there's different ways to do it. But in concluding your speech, just remember there's lots of different options. It could be a quotation, a short story, call to action. What do you want them to do? Ask a question. Refer back to the title or the beginning of your speech, and then summarize what you want them to remember. Because as Yogi Berra said, it ain't over till it's over. So you want to leave them with dessert. Great is the art of beginning, said Longfellow, but greater is the art of ending. So thank you in conclusion.
Is Mark going to give a speech?
No, I'm going to give an evaluation of Peggy's speech, and Pete is gonna give an evaluation of my evaluation.
So these are the only two speeches we're having today. Okay. Okay, Alan, being your general evaluator, I'll let you come and do your talking.
Thank you, Virginia. As general evaluator, I'd like to introduce our people on our evaluation team. Georgia is our timer today. Pete has been our word of the day, O'Connor and grammarian. Donna will have our table topics in just a few minutes with that, and then Mark will be evaluating Peggy's speech, and Jim will be evaluating Pete's speech. So I guess with that, I will turn the election back over to Virginia, and she can introduce our table topics person for today.
What should we take about it? What should we take? Thank you. Okay, our table topics person today is Donna. And she's going to challenge us today with some information.
Thank you, Virginia. Alan, we'll start with you.
Hello, Toastmasters. Please give us your best advice to break a habit, and also how to create a routine or habit. To break a habit, it has to be something that you do out of a repetition that you don't necessarily want to be doing anymore. And so probably the best advice is to maybe have somebody else kind of be your, I guess, evaluator. And if you end up with that, doing that habit again, they can call you to task regarding that. So it's probably a two-person involvement regarding the breaking habit. To create a routine or habit, it has to be something that you probably enjoy doing, and because of that joy in doing that, whatever it is, you start to do this at a certain time and certain days, and But I think in order to create a routine or habit, it's gotta be something that you enjoy doing, or else you wouldn't end up having that as a habit. And in conclusion, make sure that the habit that you do have is one that is probably pleasing to others, because if you have a habit that's not pleasing, you can get into some pretty difficult situations.
Thank you, Alan. George, you want me to time and I'll let you pick a.
Turn the light off.
Hello, Postmasters and Table Topic Master. This is one that's pretty appropriate for me, but I don't know if I should be, it says, what advice do you have to help organize and purge household items? I should probably be listening to somebody give that to me instead of the other way around. Well, there are some good standards that everybody does give you when they give you advice, and it's how many times should you handle an item. If you handle it a second time and you haven't used it, probably it's a good chance that you might want to get rid of it or give it to somebody who could use it. Now this is a problem when you have something that you think is valuable. Of course, if you can find somebody who possibly could use it. Now I always ask my children, well, could you use this? You know, we've had this for 20 years in the attic. Could you possibly want it? We don't want it. Now one of the other days, one of my sons that lives in town here said, had just gone through a death of his wife's dad, who lived alone, and it was very sudden, and they had to go in and they had to take care of all the items, get rid of them in some way. And he said to me, get rid of your stuff. I don't want to do that again. And so I kind of took that to heart. So before Christmas, I was up in the attic, and I did sit down and start going through some of these things. Things that I had for 20 or 30 years, checks that I had from 1965, and I wondered, how do I really need these? And so I did manage to throw some of them away. A lot of the items actually were things I've saved from our kids, and some of the things they did in school when they were young. And it's hard to throw some of those things away, even though they don't want them. So what advice should I give? Well, follow your heart, I guess.
Jim?
Thank you, Table Topic Master. What would you like to accomplish this year in Toastmasters? Table Topics Master Donna, fellow Toastmasters, what would I like to accomplish this year in Toastmasters? Every year for the last about 4 or 5 years, I have completed a Competent Communicators Manual. I currently am well into a second Advanced Communicator Bronze, so I'd like to finish my Bronze this year to directly answer the question. There's a possibility that I could eventually get my DTM. It's kind of hard to get a DTM because you do need to establish a club, and that is really a challenging thing to do. With all the involvements I have, I put that kind of on the back burner, and so if I never get a DTM, hey, fine, but I will continue to keep that as a bump on the horizon. Madam Toastmaster, that is my response.
Thank you. Mark?
Oh, yeah.
Either one. I
Oh,
didn't mean
okay.
to persuade you there.
Well. regarding New Year's resolutions, please share with us something that you resolved to do, and also something you resolved not to do for the new year. Well, one of my resolutions, I wouldn't really call it a resolution, that's kind of an ongoing resolution, is my resolve to lose body weight. I'm gonna lose some body weight. And I say no a whole lot to sugar items in the grocery store and things like that. But I'm still kind of a binge eater, and then I guess because of being a kind of delusional, then I'll, kind of retroact my feelings, and I get chewed out or something. Well, then I'll overeat, and then that's my way of blending in socially. If that's kind of complicated, but I resolved not to do. Let's see. I'm not going to say I'm going to resolve not to do it, but I am going to make a resolution to make an effort to save a little more money, and spend less money. And I guess another thing, I've got a hospital bill. I resolved to get that paid off, and it'll be July by the time I get that done. Well, anyhow, that's all I got.
Thank you, Mark. Virginia, I will give it back to you for finishing out on the beach evaluations, please.
Okay. Our general evaluator should come and request different things here as far as that goes, and I hope that our altruism turns out good too.
I guess at this moment, I would like to call on the evaluators of the speeches that were given today. So would Jim give an evaluation of each speech, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. The speech that Pete gave was a 5 to 7 minute. It's called Speaking in Praise of. Wow. It's a challenging even to hear these things, let alone be the person addressed. A couple of years ago, Pete gave me a plaque, and on the plaque it said, "You make a difference." And he promised me a letter that would accompany that. I'm assuming that this is the letter that accompanies it. I will take it that way. You don't have to affirm that, but that is my response to that. What was effective? Speaking as a person who lived the comments that were addressed, they were accurate. I particularly liked the accuracy. They were very accurate. He presented with great enthusiasm. We never have a problem understanding Pete. His eye contact, his voice are just spot on. Obviously, this comes through decades of observation. We have known each other for a very long time. He mentioned something about to Bozeman and back. He found out how long I could talk without breathing. It also previously was just Billings and back, if I recall, and then Great Falls and back on another occasion. Don't ask Jim Squires a question that is open-ended. You're warned. A suggestion is offered. What could the speaker have done to make the speech more effective? And I thought about that. Really, this came as a test. It is a test to respond when you're being honored. How do you come back on that? So it's a test of your humility. It's a test of your altruism. if I can use that in that thing. Obviously, I am pleased. It's an unexpected honor, and I was honored by this speech, so thank you.
And the evaluator for Peg's speech is Mark. Can you give the evaluation of Peg's speech, please?
Oh, okey-dokey. Well, thank you, Alan. Peggy, I don't know what to say. I was really taken by your speech. I thought really educational, and there is, I know that your presentation, some of your presentation was kind of like altruistic, you know, like, you know, helpful for others, and to understand it. I thought, yeah, one of the questions here, it says, what aspect of the speaker's presentation style did you find unique, and why? And I wrote down, you're more devoted. I thought you're very devoted to the topic. And what makes you unique about it, you showed, I would say that you showed more devotion to your topic, you know, than other speakers that I've listened to in Toastmasters. So, you didn't have any trouble, you know, attracting the speakers, I mean, the members, your audience's attention. And, but I thought, you know, it's educational and very interesting, and I thought some of the things you talked about were kind of with it. Your little comparison, you want a dessert, you know, at the end of your speech, the conclusion and stuff. I thought it was a really good speech, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mark, for that evaluation.
Thank you.
And in a little bit of a different twist today, I will call on George, call on Pete to give an evaluation of Mark's evaluation. So Pete, if you're ready to do that.
So this is not for the evaluation contest, and often it's just done in written form, but as time permits, let me, for Mark and for the club, evaluate his evaluation. First question is, did the leader appear to give careful consideration to the speech and the evaluation? Yes, you did. Excellent. Even the little quote showing how careful you were listening. And how effective did the leader demonstrate critical thinking skills in the verbal evaluation? Quite effectively. Again, you showed that you paid deep attention to the topic and responded to it in terms of its value to the club. Was the leader able to be objective and unbiased in the evaluation? I didn't hear much of Mark sneaking into that. I heard the general man, the club member who would take benefit from it. What could the leader have done differently to provide a more thoughtful and helpful evaluation? I think just more of the same. That's the only suggestion that I could make was on that. Was what you did was great. If you'd done a little more, it might have been better, maybe not. And what did you do well? The directness of your presentation has improved so much since you started, Mark. I really like the way you get to the topic and stick to it. Thank you, Mark.
Yay. And now I guess I encourage everybody to vote for best evaluator at this time. And if while we're doing that, if George, if you have the times for speeches and evaluations and table topics, could you give that report to us?
Yes, fellow Toastmasters. First of the speeches, Pete's was a 3 to 5 minute speech, and it was 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Peggy's was a 10 to 15 minute speech, and it was 13 minutes 45 seconds. As our table topics, Alan had 1 minute 50, and 59 seconds. Jim had 1 minute 7 seconds. And Mark had 1 minute 55 seconds. The evaluations, Jim was 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And Mark's was 1 minute and 43 seconds. And Pete's evaluation of Mark's evaluation was 1 minute 24 seconds.
Thank you for those times. And Pete, if you're ready for your WAG report, mention who your word of the day and things of that nature, if you could do that report, please.
Thank you, Alan. Fellow Toastmasters. Altruism was used by myself, Peggy, Jim, and Mark, and did I miss anybody else who? On Virginia, that's right, towards the end. Very good. Who did?
Jim did.
Yeah, I got Jim. Thinking about grammar and Peggy's word choice, I picked up on this too, Mark. Who doesn't want dessert? You know, Peggy told us that every good speech, you want a dessert. You want a sweet finish. And so that was a wonderful grammatical device. Also, without a word, Virginia, when the markers at the board were not sufficient, demonstrated true altruism by coloring over the first word and then helping Peggy get to a good marker. Just complete selflessness. So demonstrated altruism as well as used the word. And then I noticed Alan put right to use Peggy's speech with his table topics by strongly saying, in conclusion. So that was fun to see as well. Now, during the counting, which is a skill that requires me to close my eyes and listen sharply, I was really kind of worried as you hear the results. Remember, my record is 23. Okay, just to mention that. In 15 minutes of speaking about, Peggy had only 2 ums. Wow. Alan, also during his speaking, had 2 uhs, and many of those places he would have said he's replaced with dramatic pauses. Way to go, Alan. So talk about most improved, you got it. And George had a 1/2 that only a Toastmaster could hear. Yeah, if it'd been on TV, no one would have noticed. And then Jim had 5.5 and 1 or AA, I should say, 1 repetition like that. And Mark, you've fallen short of my record in spite of ample opportunity to speak during your 2 times speaking, your table topic and your evaluation. You had 11 each for a total of 22, falling short of the world record. So you also have been told before to watch the you-knows, and you had 2 of those. And also you had 2 trailing ands, where you'd say and then it would just fall off. So then in the misspeaking category, again, things that only Toastmasters would notice, George and I both had a 1/2 of a place we got into a little bit of trouble with saying the word properly. That concludes my WAG report, Alan.
Thank you. Well, we started a little after 12, and we're going to end up in plenty of time to just meeting by 1. Virginia, do you have the results of the speakers and evaluated topics?
Okay. Our best table topics person today is Alan. And our best evaluator is Mark today.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
And our best speaker is Pete.
Oh.
Fellow Toastmasters, running the risk that you're gonna drum me out of the club. I need to say, this is a miscast ballot. Peggy, you reminded me with your speech so much of the guy who gave the speech, My King. Your presentation was excellent. I think that you really deserve this every bit as much as I do.
It was so great to honor them at this time, and it's nice to honor somebody while they're still right here, so that's great.
So is there anything else anybody needs to share today? Yeah, I guess it's time for our meeting to be closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Officers next week. Officers
Oh,
next
yeah.
week,
At your hall, at your
downtown, right?
downtown.
Yeah.
Office
So it's
meeting.
officers, it's annual officers training next week downtown.
Downtown, okay.
Oh.
All truism, you want this?
No, thanks, that's okay. It can, I can file it circularly.
I'm gonna give that.
Thank you, Alan.
Oh, you,
Because you
no,
deserved it.
no, that's for
Thank you very
evaluation, and
much.
you really deserve that.
Your
So
shoes
you
come on time.
Okay.
Always.
Yeah, well, thank you there, thank you. Yeah, very good speech.
Oh, here you go, Mike, here's your book.
Okay, thank you, Pete.
You're welcome, sir.
Everyone have a
Get some
good day.
paper clips now, I
I
guess.
like the opinionated
There you go.
meeting, have opinions, I like that, have
Double-sided
opinions, that's a good thing.
Let's have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do that.
You remember what I said about my
Well, thanks for your evaluation,
Yes.
You bet.
Pete.
So
I'm
often,
very
Wrong.
happy about that.
Never in doubt.
never in doubt, exactly.
You know, I wasn't expecting to get
Oh,
unapologetically on today. But oh, it's such a relief.
Great to see
Yeah,
you.
we're
So
just
very
sure.
happy. Oh, when Peggy started talking